All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it is finally here. The playoff field is set. We have conference champions to talk about. We have a playoff field that includes a 12-team playoff. We got all sorts of controversy that's going on. I'm joined by my co-host, the man that's got an IQ higher than the collective members of the entire college football playoff committee. Fresh, how you doing, buddy? I'm fired up. So we've talked already.
I'm not sure that's a compliment, Haps, if you're saying my IQ is higher than the playoff committee. But
all of them, put them together, and you're still smarter than them.
all right. Finally beat Alabama, back-to-back SEC champions, 3 of the past 5 years. It's a good day. Exercised some demons yesterday, and that game didn't even feel close. After the block punt, that game really did not feel close at all. Complete stellar effort by Kirby and the Dawgs. And, now we have a playoff format, so we can roll from there.
Right. This is an interesting thing, Fresh, because I'm going to go kind of real quick around the conference committees here, conference championship games here for the committee. Mine here, Fresh, made Alabama look like a JV team. And I will say this, and I promised I would lead off the show with this to myself when I was making my notes last night. All year long, I have been at times probably more critical than other people would like me for Georgia. I've asked for Georgia to show me a complete game. I've asked you to, I wanted to see the defense play the way they want to do. I wanted to see the line play, and they did that yesterday afternoon. Georgia took a decent Alabama team, and I'm going to get critical about Alabama here in a minute, but they made a decent Alabama team and look like a freshman JV team. Like, this was not even close. I don't care that Alabama, they have one good drive the entire time. They get that touchdown in there. But other than that one good drive, and again, I don't know if Georgia took their foot off the gas or put their coverage back a little bit and played soft coverage, keep everything in front of you, which would make sense because you're kind of trying to milk the clock, get out of there with a win. But at the same time, too, I saw the end of it where the Georgia players got his belt off and just going back and forth and back and forth. It was BTA that entire 4 quarters of that game. Again, and this is where I even go my first critical, because this is going to be a Festivus episode, but we're only going to take one part of Festivus. I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to put up a poll or anything like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to air all of my grievances on this show that I have with the college football playoff committee. It leads to my first grievance. 1, Georgia should have been ranked number 2 over Ohio State. Indiana, obviously, 12-0. You're the only undefeated team left. Indiana deserves to be number 1. Great job out of the Hoosiers. Great job out of them in the Big Ten title game. They beat Ohio State and really looked impressive doing it. Even then, you drop Ohio State to 3. And then you could get into an argument about Texas Tech and Ohio State. But Georgia, what they did to Alabama, exercised the demons from earlier in the year and did it in such a convincing fashion. They deserve to be the number 2 rated team in the country. That's my first major grievance, is that Georgia should have been ranked number 2 instead of Ohio State. Ohio State should have been 3. And I'll even go back and say that you did not exercise the demon. You eviscerated, you ghostbusted them. You made them look like a complete fool in Atlanta. And again, that's my first one. Texas Tech, they did a great job against BYU, and I'm going really fast and quick, fast and in a hurry here, Fresh, because I can feel myself even talking faster because of how worked up I am about this stuff. So I'll stop for a second here.
When you kind of look at the top 4, I mean, Indiana, the winner of that game was going to be number 1 overall seed, and rightfully so. But what if they would have undefeated? They would have won, they would have beaten a top 3 team or top 2 team. It would have been impressive. If Georgia won, I believe they should have been number 2 based on the same thing. They have gone through, they've done what they had to do. And if you look at in games versus current AP top 15 and even college football playoff top 15 teams, Georgia dropped 28 on Alabama, 21 when they first played, 35 on Texas, and 43 on Ole Miss. And it's the same categorization. Ohio State has played 2 teams, Texas, who they put up 14 on, and Indiana, they put up 10 on. So if you're looking at just apples to apples, that's where that 2-3 kind of gets, I would have put Georgia at 2. Not just because of homer, but they're games versus ranked opponents, putting up points and winning games and margin of victory and all that fun stuff has to come into play. The Texas Tech Ohio State argument would have been interesting because Texas Tech has put up, they put the boots to Utah. They put the boots to BYU twice. So then that really, from that perspective, I saw the committee, they didn't even consider the Big 12 or Utah or BYU as quality opponents. Even though they have BYU as the number 14 technically, the second out. I really don't think they gave them much credence as like a quality opponent. So it is what it is. It's gonna be entertainment now. You have four. There's a chance we might get a Georgia Ohio State semifinal matchup if both teams can, keep going that far. So the TV viewing is going to be historic. But at 1 through 4, we knew the 4 teams were going to be if everything went chalk. It's just where they're going to be seated. And I'm actually the other thing. If the committee really wanted spice, they would now be potentially getting an A&M Miami winner versus Ohio State. They could have had A&M Miami winner versus Georgia and had potentially Carson Beck, January 1st matchup. Kind of thought that would have been something like, hey, we can really boost and have that revenge game. But, we'll see what happens the weekend of the 19th and 20th of December on how that plays out. But there's intriguing matchups across the board. But there are 2 that are probably going to be sloppy and ugly. And one, that's actually a rematch of earlier in the season.
Yeah. All right, Fresh, since I went a little bit long on the opener there, anyone you want to talk about before we go into more of my grievances?
Right off the bat, Alabama being at 9 is my biggest. I mean, we'll dive into the 2 Group of 5 conferences getting bids over the ACC, which when Duke and Virginia crapped the bed, that kind of happened. But Alabama at 9, you have 3 losses. Yes, you lost in the SEC championship game. Yes, you beat that team by 3 points earlier in the year, but that lost to Oklahoma, and then giving them a rematch in Norman, a 3-loss team above a 2-loss Miami team. It's really hard to digest. I would have had a Miami at Oklahoma, but Bama at 10. But then you're kind of looking. You could have potentially had a Bama A&M game, and then the winner not going to play Ohio State and really had some logos. But rewarding Alabama at 9 when they were at 9, but they were at 10. They were at 9. They didn't even move. The SEC championship game. The only thing that would have mattered is it would have bumped them higher. Their floor was at 9. They haven't looked good the past few weeks. They didn't look good versus Auburn. They didn't look good versus Oklahoma when they turned it over 3 times, even though they had tons of yards. They're really just, the Vanderbilt win. They're kind of remembering that late September, first 2 weeks of October Alabama team, and nothing from maybe the 20th of October forward. They're kind of like disregard, ignore. They just sort of mind their own business. And even then, a 3-loss team over a 2-loss Notre Dame team who lost by 1 point to A&M who's hosting and lost by 3 points to Miami who got in. It's really, this is the year they should have left Bama out.
Right.
People are going to scream SEC bias now at that point. And the other issue I have is, yes, it's a 12-team playoff, but in 2023, it was a 14. Georgia was a 2-time defending national champion, undefeated, lost by 3 points in an SEC championship game. They were moved 1 to 6. Bama doesn't even move at all. And Bama has 3 losses. That Georgia team's only loss was a 3-point loss. Yes, it's a 6-team and a 12-team and a 14 playoff, but the drop of 5 spots and the no drop at all is ridiculous. I'm not going to say SEC bias, there's an Alabama bias. And that actually screams more because that a 3-loss Alabama team getting in over a Notre Dame football team with the media market and the money that Notre Dame had behind it. Look, there's a reason why Kirby Smart can't stand Greg Sankey. And we saw it last year in the SEC championship game when he got handed the trophy. We saw it last night where Greg Sankey didn't say a word to Kirby. If you watch him on the stage, you didn't even acknowledge his existence. He went up to the President Moorhead. He went up to the AD Josh Brooks. Didn't even look at Kirby because he knows that Kirby hates him, and rightfully so. But then putting Bama in for playing absolutely horrible. That first drive, they did nothing. They get the pump block, they throw a pick, boom, boom. They're getting beat, the trash beat out of them. Georgia probably could have poured on more points if they wanted to, but Kirby knew what was going on. They didn't score until in the fourth quarter when it was 21-0. We have eyes, folks. We saw that. And that fact that loss by 3 touchdowns when it was in hand the entire time didn't matter is appalling. And that needs to change because Miami, and the other thing I have on the committee, why not rank Miami ahead of Notre Dame on Tuesday night going into the championship week? Because if they just jump them at the last minute, is that peer pressure? Is that getting blasted? There was neither team did anything different. Neither team had a strength of record adjustment because let me see, Miami didn't play Virginia. Miami didn't play Duke, so that game has 0 bearing on them. Neither of them played Indiana or Ohio State. Neither of them played Alabama or Georgia. Neither of them played Texas Tech or BYU. So where was that adjustment over the past 4 or 5 days to then replace them? There's some serious questions.
Here's the thing, Fresh. I love that the committee has just such an unbelievably short memory because they leave Notre Dame out because of a loss week 1 to Miami.
The 3 points.
And wait a minute here. Who else lost week 1 and made the playoff football committee? Could it have possibly been Alabama who got boat raced? I mean, listen, Notre
Both
Dame,
ways, by Florida State.
oh my God, by Florida State. And this is the thing that just drove me nuts about the stupid talking heads that are out there like, well, I went back and I watched the week 1 game between Miami and Notre Dame, and Miami won in the trenches. Okay, maybe they did. Maybe they did. I'll be honest with you. Did I go back and watch the week 1 game between Notre Dame and Miami? No, I didn't. I watched it at the time and I saw what I saw, and I saw, yeah, the first half went Miami's way, but Notre Dame stormed back on them. Miami holds on for a big win in Miami. Notre Dame goes, or Alabama goes to Florida State and gets shellacked for 4 quarters against a really bad FSU team. A really bad FSU team. And all of a sudden, we just forget about that. So what the committee has told me is it doesn't, as long as you have a great name, as long as you're one of the blue blood name programs, they have the logo, it doesn't matter if you lose.
And the funny part?
It matters what conference you're in.
And here's the other connection point. Miami played that same Florida State team and beat them by 2 touchdowns.
Right.
But yet Miami is ranked down below Alabama, who, like, that even in itself, I'm not saying SC bias because Ole Miss, A&M, Oklahoma deserved, and so is Georgia. But the Alabama being included in with the way it all played out, that is a problem. If it was a 3-point game down to the last possession or gone to overtime last night, I could see them leaving at 9 because they already have that W before them. But when you get completely boat raced, and then you start looking at resumes, your loss was a week 1, the same time the Notre Dame Miami game, and then Miami beat the team that beat you handily in the same exact stadium.
But we played an extra game in the conference championship. That's the next one that I have. That's my next airing of grievances here. Is the idea that there's this notion that just because we cannot be punished for making our conference title game. Here's the thing. You agreed to the format. You agreed to this format. You agreed to conference title games. You've agreed to how the playoff committee is going to work, how many seeds are going to get in, who's going to get these seeds. You could have, when this 12-team playoff committee came out with, you could have said, if you're a Power 5 conference at the time, because Pac-12 was still there, if you're a power conference at the time, you get an automatic bye, win the conference, and that's it. So you have something to play for that one. You have something to play for. And they did. They get the top 5 highest conference champions there, which gives the group of 5 thing. That doesn't mean just because I have something to benefit, I get an automatic bid, and most likely, in most years, I'm going to get a first-round bye. 3 out of the 4 power conferences all are going to have a first-round bye. So I can gain everything, but I can't lose everything either. That's not how that works. If I got some more to gain, I got to have something to lose. And then on top of that, you don't punish Alabama, but then you punish BYU, who lost twice in, again, boat race both times. I get it. Be critical about that. But then you punish BYU to drop them below Notre Dame for losing their conference title game. I'm not.
Well, and then you can add in the fact of
consistency.
The committee put Miami in because they realized with Virginia losing that the ACC was not going to get a bid. And since they are quote unquote a Power 4 league, that would have just erupted even more. So they had to sort of then use that as an excuse to jump Miami over Notre Dame, who hadn't been ranked above them the past 6 or 7 weeks, just to keep an ACC team in and not be completely devoid of having that conference affiliation or representation.
I think the thing that annoys me the most is that there's no consistency in the thought process. And again, I'm a little worked up. I'm worked into a shoot. I'll give you that. But I'm worked up into this because I think that what everyone respects is if you consistently set a precedent and you say, this is what we're going to follow, this is what we're going to do over and over and over again, and you do it week in, week out, week in, week out, and then all of a sudden at the very last minute, you move the goalposts. You move the goalposts, because if you're going to say we can't punish a team for losing in their conference title game, then BYU should be in over Miami.
Mm-hmm.
BYU should be in over Miami then. Okay, I'm fine with that. You don't punish Alabama, then we don't punish BYU. But you punish BYU and you didn't punish Alabama. And then on top of that, you say, well, wins and losses don't matter really a whole bunch. And then so I could look back at a team like Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt could be argued in there.
The committee loves Duke because Duke made their job easier. then like, hey, now we can just put one and we can blame it on Duke for beating Virginia and Virginia choking. So that took away a spot because JMU. So it makes like, all right, guys, just close our eyes, throw the dartboard, and then whichever team it lands on, let's just go.
Yeah. Fresh is these matchups in the first round. Like I don't like the matchup. Here's the two issues I have with the matchup. One, the 6-11 matchup of Ole Miss Tulane rematch. I hate that. I
Same
hate that
spot.
as a rematch. And I hate that we're getting Norman, Alabama, Oklahoma as a rematch in the first round. If you want to deliver a rematch, then position it where that rematch can have in a second round because you won your game. But don't like just lead us off into a rematch of games here because I despise that. I really despise that.
And then JMU at Oregon. We saw Liberty play Penn State. I get the Sun Belt, but that game is going to be ugly. UGLY. You don't have no alibi. Ugly.
Yeah. And you could have avoided it. All you did was flip flop. You put Tulane going to Eugene and you put JMU at Ole Miss, even if you want to do that. And then punish Alabama for losing and just drop them to 10 because it doesn't change it. Then you get A&M at Alabama and you get Miami at Oklahoma.
It would have
It's
worked out
easy.
better
It would have worked out
because
just fine.
and Tulane still deserve to. I mean, they win their conference. They've beaten Duke, who won the ACC. They have a win over a conference champion, and they beat Northwestern going to a bowl. Well, now who knows anymore because we got teams from the Big 12 opting out, so who knows who's going to a bowl game or not anymore. It's a mess, and we're gonna and that JMU Oregon game better be Friday night, so the game's over by 10:15, and people can turn it off and go to bed. Because that is a noon kickoff. It's gonna be a sleeper burn afternoon.
They just announced it is the Friday night game.
Good. That makes it just, we know it's going to be. Let's just get it out of the way. And then preferably, I don't know if they've announced the Saturday, but it should be Tulane Ole Miss right at where it noon, 11 a.m.
I just
And then
got it here.
let the spicier matchups come in from the 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock.
You're not going to believe this, Fresh. The noon kick is Miami, Texas A&M. The 3:30 midday kick. Would you want to? Which game's the 3:30 kick? Which is usually the biggest window. The
But they're going to put
3:30.
Oklahoma.
Nope. Tulane Ole Miss is the 3:30 kick. The 8 p.m. kick is Oklahoma Alabama. What are we doing?
Miami A&M should be the night kickoff. Not noon.
Right.
Ole Miss,
What are we
the Ole
doing?
Miss Tulane game is going to be over in a heartbeat. Get that game done. And the other reason why you get it done, look, if Tulane leaves, it's done. You let John Summerall go on to Florida. Now you sit around, even though it's only the day I'm going to flying out, but that game is not going to be competitive in the fourth quarter. Get that one done early, kick it off in the Grove in the morning, then go to Norman for a 3:30, midday matchup between Bama, and then have nighttime in Kyle Field from Miami. You're going to have a national audience for A&M Miami. Also, this is not all ESPN. It's not all ESPN because TNT is involved, so TNT time slots, but still.
Yeah, the TNT.
I'm trying to give TNT more of a better rating by having them instead of not getting the Ole Miss Tulane blowout. They're giving them a better game to start off with. That's the only way I can see that.
TNT has the Ole Miss Tulane game.
Are they? What are they getting the A&M Miami game?
Oh, they're getting Ole Miss Tulane at 3:30 is on TNT.
Don't they get two? Where's the other game? So the Friday night game?
They get the Friday night game too.
So they get the two worth.
What are we doing? Again,
they pay all that money to get the two crap games.
Right. Again, I'm going to make this statement here, Fresh, because I'm sitting here and I'm just feeling myself like I'm trying to calm myself down so we can like have some reasonable conversations, but I guess that's not going to make for great content. So maybe I shouldn't do that. I'm sitting here and I'm never going to make the statement that I'm going to stop watching college football. I'm not going to ever because I love college football. It's one of my favorite things. I love football in general, but college football, I love it just slightly more than I like the NFL. And I do love the NFL. This ruined it a little bit for me. Today is one of those moments in my life and where I'm going to say that I like college football about this much less after today. I like about this much less. I'm never going to make a statement that I'm going to stop watching or anything along those lines, but it's taken just that much passion out of me because of just foolishness and just stupidity.
Now, is this also, I'm going to put this out there, was this done on purpose to force the 16th to be voted on and handled now? You make it as messy and as chaos on purpose to be like, look, this is the reason why we need 16 because then it expands media deal that gets 4 more teams in. It reduces the pressure. It's not going to reduce the pressure on the committee because that 17 and that 18 team are going to be crying, bleeping, and moaning to get in. And they're going to be like, oh, well, we should do 24. No, 16 is the farthest it should be because, look, that whoever's 17 in the country has no business winning the national championship. You're
Mhm.
17 for a reason. And even looking out the top of my head, was it USC or Utah would be number 17? Probably
It
what it comes out to.
God bless it. It would have been people would have lost their mind because it would have been Notre Dame, BYU would have been included, and then Texas and Vanderbilt. And you again, I get it. The SEC is a huge moneymaker. I get it. There's great football being I will again, I'm one that will scream SEC bias and I'll scream and be critical of certain aspects of it. But I also will not be the person to say that it's not good football being played. I'm not going to sit there and say like the teams suck or anything like that. But do you want to like, there's a huge chunk of people that watch games up north. There's a huge chunk of people that watch in the Midwest and the West Coast and stuff like that. I get it. The SEC in the Southeast is a huge viewership, but you want to start turning people off. It's just if you constantly just include, if you go to 16 and Vandy and Texas is in there, and SEC has 7 out of 16 teams in the playoff, you want to start turning people off?
Well, and then you have a USC Vanderbilt conversation
Right.
because look,
I would.
Utah. But here's Utah's not winning this championship.
No, they're not.
Georgia Tech had blown their chance to be in the top 15. So there are circumstances. But then
Mhm.
you have that USC conversation of who they played, and they've actually been pretty. They weren't competitive in Oregon. That's the lasting memory of the Oregon game. It was not.
Mhm.
It wasn't that great. But they do have wins over Michigan earlier, and they've shown some progress and growth. But to your point, yeah, like you can't have it all be the SEC. I'm not just an advisor that I want to be. I think Gianco Pavi would be the reason why they got Vanderbilt in is just to keep that Heisman Trophy campaign.
Mhm.
But you can't go farther than 16 because
You
they're
can't
any 17, 18, 19, 20. The resume and regular season got to matters. If not, then the point you might as well just fill out
make
what
the
just
at the beginning of the
draw them
season.
all, fill out preseason rankings, and then you draw the names from a hat and you fill out brackets. And every week you don't know who you're playing next week. You just sort of filter through a bracket, you know, from what is it, 134 teams. You know, you might as well just have, Ohio State opens up with Bowling Green and Georgia opens up with Georgia Southern and, 1 for 16 matchup and you just kind of filter your way to, New Year's Day when you play for a natty. Which the part of the intrigue is I have the schedule. I'm buying my tickets. I'm waiting for that road trip. That's gonna be a tough
Right.
environment. The bracket's like, all right, well, I guess you're in my region, so I got to play you. But the regular season would become null and void. So 16 got to be the stop. But I'm really truly believing now that they did this. They took advantage of the opportunity to really screw it all up and make it terrible and have it respect to Bob Chesney or whatever his name is, Chain, and the JMU Dukes. Congratulations, great. You're on the radar truly because of what Kurt Cinetti did there, and then he left. You won the Sun Belt. Awesome. Fantastic. You're going to get the doors beat off of you. And so, Oregon's second stringers compared to your entire depth, it's going to be revealed very quickly. It's going to be a beatdown. There is a
Mhm.
reason why it's the Sun Belt. You look at the strength of schedule, I think it was James Madison had a 127th out of 134 teams. There's a reason why they're 11-1 or 12-1 with the conference title. You played the almost worst schedule imaginable. You had a cakewalk. You are
Mhm.
now going to feel the repercussions of that. You're going to get the glory. You're going to get the money for being on TV. Great. But you're going to get the door beat off you.
Mhm.
Tulane, awesome. We saw this back in September when you went to Ole Miss. You got beat by 25 or something like it was 20 plus easy. I don't really see much changing now because now you're going to have a more pissed off Ole Miss football team to try to prove
Right.
themselves that they're better without Lane Kiffin. That's going to
Right.
get ugly too. And TV viewership is going to drop off about halftime. Instead of
Mhm.
having 4 competitive games, and we're going to be like, well, man, wish we had more competitive games to watch. The allure of college football, especially on a Saturday in October or November or September, is there's multiple games in every window. If the game gets to become a beatdown, you can use the channel changer or have the quad box up and watch multiple games. Now, the only blessing is on Saturday, there's going to be NFL football. So if the games get ugly, you at least can watch the NFL games since it's slip over. But you're only going to be allotted one game at a time slot. It's
Mhm.
it's going to be some bad football being played, and people are going to be like screaming, pitchforks coming out, why we had the bad teams in. This is why we shouldn't have group of five, and we're going to have to deal with that debate. It's coming. Be prepared for it. There's going to be a lot of social media chatter the next 2 weeks about how it's terrible, meaning how Notre Dame has a better resume than JMU, or how Duke should be in because they want the Power Four conference, blah, 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 blah. It's just going to happen, but that's going to be a more validation to move to 16 and give them much more of a layer of this is why, because we want to avoid these conversations going forward.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough to get the conferences to, especially Listen, let's not lie to ourselves and say the power doesn't reside in the Big Ten and the SEC with who's going to decide this thing going forward.
Well, I mean, it's just like World War II.
What's it going to look
Eventually,
like?
the Soviet Union and the United States, there was the big three, but the Soviet Union and the United States, they were dictated to Winston Churchill and England once they got powerful. Like, the two power programs are going to drive the rest of the conversation. Everybody else is playing along to spread.
Yeah, it's going to be very intriguing to see what goes through here. All right, Fresh, let's look at the bracket here. I'm going to say this. I would, I'm penciling already in Oregon and Ole Miss into the next round, regardless there. What are you looking in the second round matchups? Like who, if off paper for you, who would you say second round matchups?
Oregon, Texas Tech, that's going to be fun.
That's going to be very fun.
I got to, and that's probably going to be in the Cotton Bowl on that Friday night, New Year's Eve, because they're going to have all the Texas Tech fans. They're going to keep that game local for them, or as close as they can, because Indiana's going to get to Rose Bowl with the Big Ten affiliation. That Jerry World, Texas Tech being there, that fan base is rabid and ready,
and they got money,
and we're going to see Nike money versus Ole money, and that's going to be just whoever has the better quarterback. I think is which quarterback makes less mistakes. Is Morton ready to go? Is Dante Moore be able to handle the pass rush? Can the Oregon offensive line hold up? That one's going to be. I think that's going to be a great leading into New Year's Eve and in the ball dropping and we clicking over 2026. That is going to be a special night.
Hold on. They just announced it. Ohio State will be in the Cotton Bowl in Jerry World for the Miami Texas A&M winner.
Ooh. So
Texas Tech is going to be at the Hard Rock Stadium in
Orange
Miami.
Bowl.
Yep.
So they're going to get the noon kickoff.
Yep. Wow. And Georgia is in
the Sugar
Baton
Bowl.
Rouge, in the Sugar Bowl, and Indiana's in Pasadena.
Okay. So
it's all this stuff. We're recording this right after the announcement of the playoff team. So all this information is coming quick to us, guys.
That putting Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, A&M potentially, or Miami. I would have loved, and it's gonna be weird. You're bringing Oregon across the country to play a noon kick on New Year's Day. Assuming they beat James Madison.
I assume so. I'd hope so. Or Dan Lane needs to quit.
Now, granted, they are going to be over this for a few days. It's not going to like this flying like the NFL the night before, but you get a home game on a Friday night, so that you get the extra break. And then you have to fly across country. Literally, we're going the Pacific Northwest to Miami. It's one of the farthest, trajectories of a flight plane you possibly can have in the United States. I expect maybe Oregon to come out a little sluggish in that game, because it's the night before you're around your hotel, there'll be a lot of fireworks, a lot of celebrations, and getting up and getting going after it the first thing in the morning. That'll be an interesting New Year's Day game. Ohio State versus A&M or Miami on New Year's Eve. That's going to be a spectacle. Because if it is A&M, and obviously Ohio State travels tremendously, and you have all the Buckeye fans who there's a lot of them that live in Arizona and in Texas. Retired down there, moved down there. So you already have that fan base locked and loaded. If it's A&M, you can have a lot of A&M fans there basically at home, or if it's Miami, you can have the 5 Miami fans in the entire country flying to Dallas. Yeah. But you'll get a Miami, Ohio State playoff game. And I don't think they've met in a bowl game or a game that means something truly since that national championship game.
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah, that'd be something to look into. So that would even just add the spice and bring back painful memories of, was there actually pass interference or not, and all that, and Maurice Clarett, and
there's a catch when it should have extended the drive. The game never should have gone to overtime.
The moments of that entire game. I'm gonna tell you right now, either way, that game is gonna have or being a ratings bonanza because the two teams playing Ohio State on New Year's Eve will draw. Ole Miss, Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Obviously, there'll be a lot of Ole Miss fans coming over down there, assuming they beat Tulane. If not, Tulane gets a home game. If Tulane beats Ole Miss, they're playing in New Orleans. They don't have to travel. But we'll go with Ole Miss getting that W. We'll get a rematch of a shootout where Georgia's defense locked them down in the fourth quarter in Athens. That Ole Miss offense was coming. So the biggest key was how's that Georgia defense change to handle that Ole Miss offense in Trinidad Chambliss on turf in a quote unquote neutral site. That game, you're going to see how is the Lane Kiffin being gone. Mm-hmm. And just Charlie Weiss called the game different because I don't care. Charlie Weiss is the offensive coordinator. Lane Kiffin was calling the plays, folks. He was dictating the vibe of that football team. So how does that change? And then Indiana, get Oklahoma or Alabama. Preferably, from my perspective, this Alabama team, if they played Indiana, they would get beat by 2 touchdowns because that offense, whether the Indiana's defense looked good, that Alabama defense would not be able to hang. If it was Oklahoma, I want to see Oklahoma's defense versus Indiana's offense.
It's offense, yeah.
and see where Brett Venables can he make adjustments to actually limit or be comparable to what Ohio State did in 11, 13 points last night. That would be the most. There'd be a lot of crimson either way, a lot of red in the stadium. You have to tell who's actually a fan unless you hear people cheering. But that will be, from a bracket standpoint, the best competition would be Oklahoma playing Indiana and getting that Brett Venables defense versus that Coach Cincinnati Indiana offense, and letting it sort of filter from there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at, for me, Fresh, I kind of just put it together is Oregon, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, UGA. I got a feeling Miami just is going to want to prove something against A&M. And I got Miami, and it's 2011 last time Ohio State and Miami played, but that was the Luke Fickell year. So we'll talk about that. A whole different. I don't even know. I don't even know how I consider Luke Fickell year. And then I put Indiana, Oklahoma, because again, I'm just annoyed with Alabama right now. And then the interesting thing to me is where it matches up, like the winner of Oregon, Texas Tech versus the winner of Indiana, Oklahoma, or Alabama. And then Georgia, Ole Miss, and I'm going to say this. I think after watching what Georgia did, I don't think Ole Miss has much of a chance in that game. Again, I get playoffs, thing can happen, but that's why. And then us having the whole thing is Ohio State with another chance to go toe-to-toe with Georgia in the Final Four there. I will, and maybe this is the committee's thing, on paper. Yeah, I'm going to say this, that's on paper. UGA at 3 may have the easiest path to the Final Four, to gain to that 4 road. Like, you're sitting there, you got the bye, and then you're playing a team that lost their head coach, and we'll see what kind of Ole Miss team shows up on the field that one. But Tulane, I mean, I'm putting UGA as a 2-touchdown favorite against either one of those teams.
Well, I'll tell you right now, one little element that last year, Georgia was in the Sugar Bowl versus Notre Dame. The night before was that terrorist act that got everyone in a frenzy and all the panic around town because they didn't know what was going on. And then you have to layer on Gunnar Stockton making his very first start against a very, very, very good football team, Notre Dame, and then Kirby's dad passing away that exact same, 1 day or 2 days before. That was a lot happened at one time. You're going to see a different Georgia football team show up because that majority of that roster was there last year, and they went through all of that. And they're going to be like, we can't lose here 2s in a row. That extra layer of incentive it gives them a significant advantage because now we have a chance to, number one, beat Ole Miss twice. We have a chance to get a redemption for last year and to prove that we aren't just a but team anymore. And what we did in 21 and 22 and 23 means something. And so I expect the boys to be ready to play down there in the Bayou.
Yeah. And I'm intrigued to see how Ohio State recovers from losing to a very good Indiana team. The fact that Indiana now has solidified themselves, it really bothered me going into the Big Ten title game because me and you have watched enough Indiana football to be like, I get it. You can look at their regular season and say this, but I think back to us. What was the name of the restaurant we were sitting at? We're coming back from the UCF game and we got
in Orlando.
And we're sitting at the restaurant and we just get into there and we look up and we see Indiana playing Illinois. Illinois at the time was ranked. Illinois, half decent team. And Indiana is just eviscerating them. They're dominating Illinois like no one's business. And I think both me and you looked at each other and were saying, we didn't expect that. And there's all these people out there that would kind of discount what Indiana had done all year long. And I heard from multiple people who was like, Indiana, oh, you're only playing Indiana. I'm like, yeah, it proves that you've watched zero Indiana football. You don't realize how good of a team that is. And the fact that now they have that win over Ohio State, it now announces like, hey, this is a legitimately good football team and a team that has the ability to win a national title. We'll see how they perform.
But tell me, in a 2-year period, outside of Michigan or Ohio State, because I don't care what we say, it's always been the big 2 and little whatever number you want to add. Give me a team that has 2 losses total in 2 seasons, has beaten Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, Wisconsin, Iowa, USC at least once, and has a Big Ten title, and has made a college football or BCS like Final Four or college football playoff in 2 years. You can't.
Mm-mm. It's one of the most impressive runs.
You've gone through the names of Michigan State. I'll give them even credit. Like you beat the names of the league. You beat Nebraska. You beat the trash out of them. So you have set the standard. You have done something that's historic, and you also
I'm really
ended,
thinking.
your first outright Big Ten title since 1945. For you youngins, that was the end of World War II. It's the end of a 30 straight game losing streak to Ohio State. A lot of things have been lifted in that impressive run. It's not, yes, before Finetti 2 years ago, Indiana was had the most losses and the lowest win percentage all time in college football history and the most losses. They were the bottom. You couldn't get farther than that. They have, I mean, obviously 20 something wins in 2 years isn't going to bring you all the way to the top 10 overall in win totals, but it's gotten you out of the cellar and there's momentum. And it's just a major accomplishment for Coach Cincinnati and what he's done there. Yes, NIL and Mark Cuban, what they've done for the programs has been ecstatic, but some of those guys came in with him from JMU. They showed up, and they have elevated their game. They've been coached up and they're playing at a higher level. Someone put out, rivals, current roster of 5, 4, and 3-star recruits, whether they keep the transfer portal or originally recruited. Well, I say 85, and most of those were 5 and 4s. Indiana had 62, I think, and they had no 5 stars. They had some 4s and a lot of 3s. So the guys are even playing up from where they originally recruited at a star ranking. So the blue chip ranks and all that fun stuff. Buckeye still had a great team, and you went out and they've done it. They've coached the guys up, and they're playing at a high level. And that's just a major testament to the coaching staff.
I can't think of a team that I could even give a comparison to. If you have a comparison, leave it in the comments there. Fresh has got a great point. Like, what program we've ever seen have like this kind of like a 2-year flip and turnaround to being considered a dominant tier program?
And you can't say Vanderbilt because Vanderbilt hasn't played for an SEC title. Like,
Right.
they are not
They
in
have
the
some
playoffs
nice
here 2 years in a
wins.
row. They have some good wins, but they haven't been able to maintain consistency. They beat Alabama as an upset, but they lost to Texas. They get beat by Texas this year. They lost in the rematch to Alabama. Like, they haven't been able to carry that forward and maintain dominance.
And I think that's part of the reason why some people are probably up in arms, because I think that anyone in college that is a college football fan, if you are just expecting constantly of the same old, everything that you've kind of known and loved in 50 years or 45 years or however long you've been a fan of college football, I don't think fans have realized what NIL and the transfer portal has done. I think maybe some younger fans who are, probably in the early mid 30s, 35, 40-ish, right in that range where we're at, you can
Let's
kind
say
of
we're in the same range, so yeah, youngins
right,
younger than us.
right, younger than us. But when you say these things, I think we're seeing the writing on the wall that NIL and the portal are like moving things around, and programs that you have like this opinion on, it's not the case anymore. It's not the truth anymore. And it's a new age of college football. And if you're thinking in, well, like, who in the world is this, or this conference isn't good, or this team isn't good, like, no, that's factually inaccurate now.
Yeah, and you go like the NIL thing. There's always been bad men. People have been
Oh
getting
yeah,
past,
it's just
but
above ground
when
now.
you but how much will how, at that time you had to sort of keep it. It was never known like you wouldn't really rat each other unless like SMU popped out of nowhere. But the transfer portal has done more to expand out the talent than NIL because one of these guys, if you're legit, you're going to get paid. The transfer portal having no real restrictions and being able to go multiple times to keep bouncing around. If you're a second on the depth chart, you're like, I'm not going to play behind someone for 2, 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to sit out a season. I'm going to jump and get playing time immediately and escalate my game. Yeah, you might be able to get extra financial incentive to jump, but if you were getting recruited by the big names or whoever, there was someone who knew someone who knew someone who got a McDonald's bag and left it somewhere conveniently and, maybe forgot to take it with them and you sat next to them, you take it away and you walk away. But now I can then funnel that money through a corporation as a name, image, and likeness. But the transfer portal is really how I have the fluid of the free agency mentality of getting the guy to my school to play and being able to restock a roster a lot quicker. If this was back in the day, even with money, I mean, even with NIL involved, Indiana getting rapid, getting the players from JMU, getting players who are second, string somewhere else, getting them to play immediately all together, you would need 3 or 4 years to really build. That's another reason why coaches now, even though we've seen chaos, coaches are being held to a faster standard of you have 2.5 to 3 years to get it done. Because we can turn the roster over so quickly, it's not always trusting the 5 to 6 year plan. It is, you have 2 to 3 years tops. And if you're not there, you're gone. I don't care what we're seeing right now. Outside of Florida State, the buyout doesn't matter. People, they're able to find money. We might not be able to pay people's mortgages or health insurance, but we'll find money to get rid of a coach. And that's another thing where you have to know when you walk in that door, the leash gets shorter and shorter. And if you're not doing it, if you're not showing progress and growth or competing for a playoff spot in 3 years, you're done. With that said, I do have to commend Vanderbilt for giving Clark Lee some substantial, buffer because the first 3 years was terrible. Then NIL and the stadium starts getting built and starts seeing some progress. Yes, it did carry over when, Diego Pavia arrived last year and he had the spark at quarterback to motivate the rest of the team. But they allowed him to be there for that 5 year period to show his entire rebuild of the program. In some places you need that, but at Indiana, Cincinnati can turn it in 2 years because he had the portal, he had the money, and he was able to know I can go win 10 games. My schedule's in a good spot, right? I just got to show up on Saturday, get it done, move forward.
Yeah. All right, Fresh. One last thing I have. Make sure everyone, you're circling your calendars for December 27th because December 27th is the best day for non-playoff bowl games here, Fresh. Are you ready for the December 27th bowl lineup?
I'm waiting.
Oh, this is a great one. We start off with the Military Bowl, 11 a.m., Navy, Marine Corps Memorial Stadium, Annapolis, Maryland. And then you follow that up at noon with the Pinstripe Bowl up north again, up at Yankee Stadium. But, Yankees not going to be outdone. You got the Fenway Bowl on 27th at 2:15, Boston Red Sox Stadium, Fenway Park. But that's when it really kicks off the afternoon slate. It is the world famous Pop-Tart Bowl at 3:30 in Orlando, Florida. Then at 4:30, the West Coast, not to be outdone, and this is on the CW, so this is going to be fantastic. It's the Snoop Dogg Arizona presented by Gin and Juice. You got the New Mexico Bowl at 5:45. You got our Jacksonville's own Gator Bowl at 7:30. The Texas Bowl at 9:15 to wrap it up. That's in Houston, Texas, man. The 27th is the best day for bowling.
Have any of the teams been announced for participating in those games yet so far? As of 1:42 Eastern Standard Time on Sunday.
Fresh in my page real quick here. On CBS, no. Let's see if I have CBS and ESPN up right now.
ESPN might have the most, but they're going to have the majority of the games.
Yeah, right now, no one has announced yet.
Well, those are filtering in through the afternoon and evening.
Probably around 3:30.
When we hit our preview show for the bowl games, we'll dive into those much more in depth.
Yeah. All right, Fresh. Well, the postseason's here, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button up there. Hit the notification bell. Get notified every single time we drop a new episode. But we have one of our favorite episodes coming up. This has been an episode where I was coming in hot. I gave Fresh a good warning that I was in some sort of way. This is almost a therapy session for me there. So I appreciate you guys giving me the free space and the free couch for therapy. But one of our favorite episodes is next week. It is our annual Army-Navy game. There's one game on the slate. There's one game we focus on. So we will be talking all things Army-Navy, giving some special love to our military members and the military academies in this annual tradition here. I can't wait to talk about that one. So do not miss it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button up there. Get notified every single time we drop a new episode. And we're not going anywhere. We have all these bowl games that are going to be announced. Fresh and I are going to get you through bowl season. It's a little bit fun because we have the great pleasure of trying to figure out who's playing in the bowl, who's jumped in the portal. Again, give us a little bit of grace because sometimes we'll get some players wrong because 3,000 of them are going to jump into the portal. And your fourth stringer is going to be playing in that game and starting. So makes it interesting for us. And we'll get you through the entire playoffs. Make sure you lock in with us. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. And who knows, depending on what gets announced, maybe Fresh and I might be at a bowl game here in Jacksonville. Maybe we're at the Gator Bowl. We'll see.
We'll see.
I got a feeling Notre Dame's going to be here.
Well, that will be interesting. Bowl season's always fun. It's extra practice. Still, don't lose focus that these bowl games are extra practice for these players. It gives a chance to develop a program, reward them at the end of the year, and they get some time off for bowl week. That's a lot of fun. But the playoffs coming our way. Hit us up, spinnablesports.com. Spinnable Sports on Twitter/X. More importantly, the Spinnable Sports YouTube channel. Subscribe, spread the word, leave comments, interact. We have the shorts, we have the full videos, all of the fun stuff. And follow the Irrational Confidence Podcast on Twitter/X at IR Confidence Pod. And until next time with our Army-Navy preview, we'll talk to y'all later. Y'all.